Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Red Tool House. Today we are going to continue our work on our greenhouse slash coop house slash
Who knows? Whatever the heck it is. This thing has evolved so much. I think actually it's time to have a 1-year birthday for this frame.
Oh.
I think we started on this. Actually, I think we started on it right before Christmas last year. Anyway, yeah. So what we're going to do is we're working on our hoop bends, our conduit, our 1/2-inch conduit. We're putting our horizontal stabilizers in there first to take all the shake out of that. So we'll show you what we've got going on here. Okay, well, several of you have asked me to detail. I know we've talked about this in some updates. I haven't really done a specific video about it. Quite frankly, it changes so much as to what we're doing, and I'm not sure what's going to work, that I hate to do a video and do multiple part videos and realize, hey, I'm tearing all this out, I'm doing something different. But I think we figured out kind of what we want to do. We've obviously framed in the ends here. We've got a person-sized door on this end, and then we've got a person-sized door on that end, just a straight pass-through. It's 25 feet long, and it's 18 feet wide. And what we've done for the hoops, we've actually used 1/2-inch conduit, which is not typical of what people do. Normally you use 1 inch, and I know some even use 2 inch, I guess, to get the traditional half circle arch. The reason why I went with 1/2 inch is, I had some left over from our chicken tractor builds. We built 3 chicken tractors and needed the conduit for that. But I was happy with that style. I thought, could you go ahead and make that bigger into a hoop house? 1/2-inch conduit is so much easier to bend. Conduit bender's cheaper. Obviously, it's not as much work going into that. So I thought, can we use that same design? So you can see I kind of have like a traditional house peak design or a traditional greenhouse design. And come around this way, buddy. Just follow me. You can swing on around right through there. And so what Kelly and the boys have been helping me with, we put these conduit hoops in a long time ago, but they were all they're obviously independent of one another. They would shake back and forth, and I thought, okay, I got to figure out a way to get those crossed up. Well, I wasn't quite sure how strong it would make it to incorporate another piece of 1/2-inch conduit here that ties all this together. And man, once we put it together, it is really sturdy. Again, I couldn't swing off of it. It's not like it's going to hold my 230 pounds, but it's really made this a lot more rigid, and we're really happy with how that's stiffened it up. And we've only done this one side. We've obviously got to do the other side. But what's interesting is how would you say, Kel, the engineering of what we had to figure out to connect this conduit.
took some thinking.
It did. So it seems simple enough to say, well, all I got to do is connect a horizontal piece of conduit to these ribs or these bows, and everything will be fine. Well, the problem was just figuring out how to do that. I actually ended up using self-tapping screws that go completely through the first piece of conduit and only halfway through the second. So of course we don't want a spike sticking up here and poking a hole in our plastic. But the engineering it took to figure out how to actually drill those holes and line them up was a bit of a trick. So what I ended up doing, I'll turn around here, just turn around 180 degrees. What I ended up doing is taking an angle grinder and coming through on these bows that are already installed and just grinding a little bit of flat spot, because it's so tough to drill a hole in a round piece of conduit. So I was able to take the grinder, make a flat spot, went all the way down, did that, came back, drilled a hole that's just a smaller diameter than my self-tapping screw, and that way the self-tapping screw still has the opportunity to bite into that and drill and seat. And that tended to work out pretty good. It allowed me to suck all those down and tighten it up really well. So we're going to do this other side. So when I was first trying this out, connecting, this is 3 pieces of 10-foot conduit. So there's 30 feet of conduit that start from the side, go up over the arch and back down to the other side. They go all the way to the ground. So that required, obviously, a coupler to connect 3 pieces of conduit together. Well, you know, you go to the box store and you get these standard 1/2-inch conduit couplers that just have screws that kind of bite down on it. They don't necessarily drill through. So I tried that, and that wasn't going to work at all. There's way too much slop in it. I got on the Greenhouse website supply store, and they actually have these couplers that utilize self-tapping screws, and you actually drill right through the coupler and into the conduit. So this made it much more rigid, and there's about 3 inches of conduit that rests up inside that coupler. So it really nests quite a bit of it and really holds it tight. So instead of having to use something like that, that doesn't bite through the conduit, these couplers worked. And they weren't cheap. I'll link down in the show description as to where we got them, but it definitely made it much more rigid. Now I am still using the couplers, traditional couplers here. Still using the traditional couplers here when it comes to just connecting these horizontals. So again, with a greenhouse that's 25 feet long, or hoop house that's 25 feet long, then I needed 2 couplers. So I've got 2 10-foot sections and the last piece is 5 feet. And so I've got 2 couplers tying that together. And again, you can see how now this is together, it is really, really rigid. I'm really happy with how this is coming together. So when we do the other side, I toyed with the idea of maybe doing the peak as well, but I may not need it. We'll see. It's one of those things where they're not necessarily going to line up 100%, but as far as rigidity goes, it's still going to be there. Okay, so what we've done is, since we've done one side, I don't have to do all the painstaking parts of remeasuring and everything. I've already got all my measurements, because obviously we wanted to match one side and the other, and I've got my measurements in my phone here. And there's probably smarter ways of doing this. I've never been accused of being the smartest guy in the room, so what I'm simply doing is at the starting piece, again, since it's so hard to drill a hole into a piece of conduit and to keep it lined up with all the other ones so it doesn't end up going around the clock dial. So with my measurements marked off, obviously I want to start at my first. I'm using the grinder just to make a little flat spot so I can get a drill bit started, and then get a screw in to use that as a reference. So I'll get a grind here real quick. So again, the whole point in doing that is just making a flat surface where I can get a drill bit started. And what I do with this first one is, again, try to get it my 12 o'clock position, getting my drill going here. Going all the way through. And then take my self-tapping screw here, which is, those are 1 1/4 in length. And just get it started enough that I can now use that as a reference, like a hand on a clock. I can use that as a reference, and I can have my lovely bride switch over here. Switch over there, lovely bride. So now Kelly can just make sure that that stays at the 12 o'clock position as I drill through the tailgate of my side-by-side. No, as I drill holes here, at my marks. So since this is the conduit, I want the self-tapping screw to pass all the way through. I'm going to go ahead and make the hole bigger so the self-tapping screw can just pass through cleanly. All the way through with that one. Okay, so now if things work the way they're supposed to, then I can simply get this thing started here. It goes into my pre-drilled hole in the bow. Simple bite down. So what this allows me to do, again, since the screw, I drilled the hole big enough for the screw to pass through. At least I thought I did. There it is. Yeah, so now I can just line those holes up, hold it in place, and the actual bite is happening in the bow. There it registers nicely. And what I've discovered is obviously the distance this way on my hole that I drilled is a little off, and it's making the conduit kind of snake just a little bit by just ½ inch or ¼ of an inch. And it's actually kind of adding additional rigidity, I've noticed, to it. So maybe one of those dumb luck benefits that I've run into. Okay, and then we'll just do a coupler. Okay, so we got both of the horizontal bars installed, and I think it's really stiffened everything up. It looks like it's made it rigid, hasn't it?
Looks much nicer, yeah.
So again, I don't know what kind of snow load we can handle here. In West Virginia, past couple years, we haven't had much snow at all. The year before that, we had 18 inches in 24 hours. But it's pretty rigid. It's tied together. Obviously, it's not going to support my weight. But I think spread out, if I can keep the snow from piling up on it, then I think that would handle it. Again, we can always come back and put a ridge beam in. That's why I put a double header here over the doors, or a true header over the doors. If I needed to frame out a ridge beam and put a wooden ridge beam in with a center post to give it some rigidity there, then I can do that. Now the big question is, and this is where Kelly and I are kind of debating, we're not sure what to do right now. Here it's February. This is supposed to have been a winter retreat for the chickens, so we can get them, the pasture's obviously dormant. It looks like a parking lot right now, so we want to get them out of there. And we want to fill this up with wood chips, so the carbon and the nitrogen of their poop are just rocking this winter. They've got all kinds of stuff to dig in and play in. They've got some warmth from the solar radiation there, so that would really help them in the wintertime. And then of course move them out at a certain spot, so then we can, at a certain time of year, so we can then obviously start some early plants, which around here, March, mid-March, 1st of April, could possibly get away with it without having to add alternate heat or additional heat. So we're torn as far as how to close in the ends. I've got enough plastic to plastic the entire thing. You like that idea better, right? Being all plastic so it lets more light in.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, but I don't know if that's the best option.
Yeah, I'm toying with, just because of predator pressure and other things, I'm toying with milling some real thin siding, almost like a lap siding, and just siding up to here on both ends, and then maybe up 2 or 3 feet on either side. And in my mind, the benefit of that would be, that's a rigid bottom box there that raccoon and all that stuff can't get through. And then if I'm coming around in the springtime or in the summertime and I need to weed around the edge of it to do any string trimming, then I'm not against my plastic. Again, I've never had a greenhouse, so just kind of thinking all this stuff through. Kelly did point out that right now it's 3 in the afternoon in February. So if that half wall was all siding, then right now there would be shade about right here, because where the sun is, this would all be in shade. So if the chickens were in here right now, then this would be shaded, that part wouldn't. But when the sun travels, we're pretty much exactly east-west. So when the sun travels, in the day, in the morning, there is sunlight on the entire spot. So I don't know, we'll see. Obviously, if you've got comments or suggestions, put them below what you think we should do. Again, this greenhouse is new for us, so we're definitely winging it. And we'll take that in consideration. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Well, take care, everybody.